This is Adam Lee Hall.
Hells Angels biker gang member Adam Lee Hall has been found guilty of killing 3 men from Pittsfield.
He was found guilty of being the mastermind of triple first-degree murders in 2014 and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
For the term of life without the possibility of parole.
His 2 co-defendants were also convicted and received similar sentences. Hall and his companion accused the 3 victims, David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell, of stealing. They said that these 3 people broke into their home and stole drugs. Hall and his friends got hold of these 3 people and beat them up, tortured them, and assaulted them in various ways before shooting them. In 2011, Hall and 2 other men were arrested and charged with the murders of these 3 victims. The victims were found buried in a shallow grave in a rural area of western Massachusetts. During the trial, prosecutors presented evidence that Hall and his companions had lured the victims to Hall's home, where they were beaten, tied up, and ultimately shot to death. The prosecution also alleged that Hall had attempted to intimidate the witnesses and obstruct justice during the investigation. Murder was not the only crime that Hall had committed. His record was quite lengthy and showed that he had convictions for assault, kidnapping, and other violent crimes. He was well known for having ties to white supremacist groups and had tattoos on his body featuring Nazi imagery. This case gained a lot of publicity and coverage on the media. The law enforcement agencies were applauded and appraised for their efforts to combat organized crime in the area. In the courtroom video, Hall can be seen dressed smartly in formal attire, sometimes smiling and sometimes shrugging. When the sentence was announced, Hall could be seen frowning and worried. His head was hung low. In the middle of the sentencing, he sat down, shaking his head in disbelief. It seemed like he was expecting to get off the hook easily. The family members of the deceased could be seen crying. The jury was deadlocked initially, but the judge sent them again for deliberation, after which they came out with the guilty verdict.
Over there at the house on Sunday afternoon to meet me.
20 miles away at a barbecue.
There was an outburst during the trial as well, when Hall interrupted the prosecutor who was explaining his movements during the crime. Hall had an outburst and he cursed at the prosecutor, saying that he was nowhere near the victims. Hall did not take the stand during the whole trial. This is David Chalue. He was the 2nd person to be convicted in the crime with Adam Lee Hall.
David Chalue was charged with the murder of 3 men from Pittsfield in 2011.
He was also convicted on all 9 counts, 3 counts for murder, 3 counts for kidnapping, and 3 counts of intimidation of witnesses. Intimidating witnesses is a very well-known tactic of Hells Angels gang members. They threaten to harm these witnesses if any one of them decide to go to the court and provide any evidence of illegal activities. His trial lasted for several weeks and involved testimony from dozens of witnesses. The defense team for Chalue argued that the prosecution had not presented enough evidence to prove their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They also suggested that Chalue, along with the other 2 accused, had been wrongly associated with the white supremacist gang, the Aryan Brotherhood. He further said that the testimony against Chalue came from jailhouse informants who were not dependable.
A first-degree murder conviction comes with a mandatory life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole.
Ultimately, he was found guilty by the jury and received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The court stated that his action was a true example of atrocity and cruelty. The dismemberment of the bodies was extremely barbaric and brutal. Chalue was seen in the court with a downward smile on his face, looking around, swaying from right to left. This is Joseph Lancia. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison in 1987 for his involvement in a large-scale drug trafficking operation. He was released from prison in 2006, but was sent back in 2008 due to the violation of the terms of his supervised release.
Joseph Lancia today began his 5-year sentence in prison 1 month after pleading no contest to 3 counts that he shot at a truck driven by a rival as it drove by Hells Angels headquarters in Providence.
His most recent crime was firing gunshots at a truck driver despite not having a gun license. The driver was in a rival motorcycle club and had some ongoing issues with Lancia. The CCTV camera has shown Lancia firing shots at the vehicle. it was from the clubhouse's own surveillance cameras. Lancia, also known as Joey or Joey Electric, was a former member of the Hells Angels motorcycle club in New York. He was the former president of the club's Long Island chapter and was known for his involvement in organized crime activities. Lancia's trial was part of a larger federal case called Operation Iron Horse, which targeted the Hells Angels and other motorcycle clubs involved in drug trafficking. Lancia was accused of being the leader of a large-scale drug trafficking operation that involved the distribution of cocaine and methamphetamine in New York, Florida, and California. During the trial, prosecutors presented evidence that Lancia was involved in various drug-related activities, including overseeing the distribution of drugs, collecting drug debts, and using violence and intimidation to protect the drug operation. Lancia's defense team argued that he was not involved in drug trafficking and that the prosecution's evidence was based on unreliable witnesses and circumstantial evidence. Lancia, wearing a mask, had a true poker face. He did not show much emotion at his sentencing. This is Maurice Boucher. He faced a life sentence over the killing of 2 guards. He was a famous, notorious member of the Canadian chapter and was involved in a number of organized crime activities. Under Boucher's reign, the Canadian chapter became increasingly powerful and notorious. They were heavily involved in drug trade, particularly in the distribution of cocaine. They used violence and intimidation to maintain their control. In 1997, Boucher was arrested for the murder of 2 prison guards who had been transporting one of his associates. He was also implicated in the killing of several rival gang members. During the trial, prosecutors presented a significant amount of evidence against Boucher, including wiretap recordings, surveillance footage, and witness testimony. The trial was marked by a series of high-profile incidents, including several bomb threats and the murder of a key witness in the case. Despite the challenges, Boucher was ultimately found guilty and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This trial was one of the most significant in Canadian history as it marked a major victory for law enforcement in their efforts to combat organized crime. The Hells Angels still continue to be very active in Canada. In all the footage available, Boucher can be seen walking confidently and smiling at the camera. He seems extremely arrogant and portrays an attitude that he is above the law. He was proved wrong, and rightfully so. One can question why such a group is even allowed to exist. Do you think that this club should be banned? The truth is, while the organization overall is not illegal or criminal, there have been quite a few members who have given it a bad name. These members have engaged in drug trafficking, murders, smuggling, extortion, battery, and assaults. These crimes have had a major impact on the communities. But within this group are also true motorcycle enthusiasts who share a love for riding and a sense of brotherhood. So completely banning the clubs can be detrimental to the well-being and interests of a lot of innocent people who make the right and correct use of the opportunities presented by the organization. Sadly, due to the activities of a few bad apples, the reputation of this club has been tainted, and now it is recognized in many countries like Canada, the United States, and Australia. Ready to add more thrill into your life? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for a steady stream of entertainment. Trust us, you won't regret it.